We're going to go ahead and get started. Before we begin, I wanted to introduce some people who came out tonight to support us. From the governor's office, we have Ms. Karen Jackson. From House Representative Wolf, we have Mr. David Stigmeyer. And again, tonight helping me out with the process, we have my administrative assistant. We have Nina Dunleavy, and I have Patrick Fly. And we'll go ahead and begin. First question that comes to mind when you talk about broadband is, what is broadband? When you're talking about broadband as defined by the FCC, you're really talking about 8 tiers. The 8 tiers are represented up on the screen, and they actually have to do with, if you look at tier 0, that tier is basically just north of dial-up. And I know that for those of us who have been dealing with technology for a little while now, we remember the good old days where you would plug your computer in, you would have to wait a while, then you would hit the internet, and that crunching sound would go off, and then you would start to go be able to surf the internet and access data. What is being represented by the FCC right now is just above that tier. They're saying is the first generation of broadband. When we talk about broadband in today's society, we're looking at tiers more like 2, 3, and 4. And those tiers represent video streaming, social media, educational usage, public safety usage, things like that, things that we really in our communities we desperately need, and we need to have that access for. I apologize, we were going to try this wirelessly, but at the last minute we had a resolution issue. Technology is best. Our primary objective for this undertaking is to facilitate the delivery of competitive high-speed broadband access for the entire Frederick County area, enhancing our ability to stimulate community growth, educational opportunity, and of course economic development. We feel strongly in the Frederick County area that not having access to broadband desperately handcuffs us as it comes to economic development and our ability to educate our children. Everyone here has probably heard of online learning or learning content management systems. A lot of colleges, a lot of high schools, even elementary schools are beginning to use these days, and we need to make sure that our community is able to access this. Not just 1 or 2 areas, but the entire Frederick County area. Obviously, going back to what we need bandwidth for, public safety connections, whether it be cellular connections with 3G, 4G services. We have some representatives here from the wireless community to talk to us about that tonight. Educational opportunities, obviously, online learning, content management systems, online text, where we're no longer talking about the bricks and mortars of an educational facility, but we're talking about being able to educate ourselves beyond the walls. For that, we need digital text that are dynamic and can be corrected on the fly. For that, we need broadband access. Work at home opportunities. When you're really talking about the 21st century, the ability to telecommute, the ability to no longer have to show up to an actual office to be able to work, it's a pretty big deal, and it's definitely a movement that's been striking across the country, and we want to have the same opportunities here in Frederick County. Obviously, business functionality and economic development. There's prime areas of real estate that businesses can grow and flourish, whether it be in a residential community or in an area where they may put up a warehouse or something like that, that we need to have the general broadband access so that people can sell their products and wares online and be connected to the rest of the world without having to live within a certain radius of a major city or throughway. We think that's important, and that's what we've come together tonight to take a look at. At this minute, I'm going to turn it over to our GIS director, Mr. Patrick Fly. He's going to go over some of the data points and from the surveys we've learned. Let me help him plug in real quick.
Thank you, Walt. Just to kind of explain what everyone's seeing, we started off by just looking at population around the county and the percentage at which it's been growing over the last 10 years. And what you can see is the county's been pretty steady with its population growth as far as residential areas and for the last 10 years. So as we got going with the broadband, with looking at broadband, the first thing we did was actually work with Accelerate Virginia to survey the population and get an idea of what people were using for their internet service and for their broadband service. We had about 600 points or 600 people respond to the survey so far, and that's kind of what you're seeing there. And I believe there was in the neighborhood of 15 different providers represented on that map. We then started looking at the current infrastructure that already exists, looking at transportation, network transportation, fiber lines, which are your colored lines represented up there, and the available tower assets that are already in place. And the tower assets came from the FCC, with the fiber lines coming through the state economic development. So that's the majority of the data we were looking at. We were able to also one of the things that we're seeing there is with the population, the green dots are kind of a density map showing us, kind of highlighting areas of population growth. So you can see Shawneeland, Mount Falls Park, and Star Tannery areas have seen some population growth, along with the eastern end of the county. And then the coverage itself, this data all came to us via VITA, the Virginia Information Technology Agency, and this is their broadband wireless coverage in the areas of the county that they're saying covered. So they're saying that the majority of the county does have some sort of broadband wireless. In November of 2011, the state did give us an idea based on census blocks of the areas served and underserved. So the areas the state at that time considered served are shown in green. The underserved are kind of your red areas or your yellow areas, with the red being your underserved areas. And then the last map I have here is just the different types of broadband service. And I apologize for the legend there not being very readable. But what that's showing is cable, fiber, and DSL, and in the areas, and mobile in the areas in which they're covered. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Walt.
And if you can leave that slide up right there, Pat.
Sure.
I think this slide is really indicative of what we found when we did our surveys and studies. If you take a look at this, according to a lot of the data we received, the entire area is covered for the most part. What we found through our surveys and working with Virginia Tech and Accelerate Virginia is we did have some reported dead zones. We did have some areas that we confirmed that we had originally thought were light areas. In other words, areas that there had been some coverage, but as far as cellular coverage and wireless coverage and broadband coverage in general, we really confirmed that by doing that. Accelerate Virginia, we thank the people at Virginia Tech for helping us get that together, Karen Jackson for helping us point that direction. Another young lady by the name of Sandy Terry, who was instrumental in getting us involved with Accelerate Virginia, because to be very frank, we never had this kind of data before, and that's really important. A lot of times we would talk, or we would one-on-one, we would ask questions about the coverage in a certain area, but we never really had the data aggregated that we could actually draw some conclusions.
So the blue is or is not?
The blue is, believe it or not.
Okay.
So, correct. And as I would say, is not so much. because we all know that there are light areas, and that's really why we're here to address that. We invited the providers out here, and again, thank you all for coming out tonight, and we'll get to you in a minute. But we really want to take a look at some of these maps and to talk to the providers and kind of understand from both areas. And instead of coming at it from an issue of I can't get service, I think the question needs to be stated is, what can we as a community, what can we as a local government, what can we as providers do to provide service? Because that's the end goal. I don't think that none of us want to sit around and complain about an issue. We want to have resolution, and that's why we try to bring everybody together here tonight. If you take a look at the areas here, here are the towers in the area, and I think that this is really kind of brings it out. If you can see in the middle of all that spaghetti down there, that's Frederick, that's Winchester. And that's the area that it seems that all the fiber likes to come across. We have some areas and some issues. If we go back, again, we have some areas that are areas that have grown greatly in population. And a gentleman was right in here before the meeting and said, and also pointed out another area just below Winchester. There seems to be a little bit of a light area as far as coverage is concerned. We want to make sure that everyone understands our intent is to focus on all these areas. And again, this is why we invited the providers out tonight. They may be able to shed some insight on things that they are trying to do, things that they need from us so they can move into these areas. Just to give you an idea of our management team I think is a very diverse group. We have members from both the city and the county governments. We have a member from Shenandoah University, Small Business Economic Development, City of Winchester, and Frederick County IT departments. We have local government leaders, we have private citizens, and we have leadership from the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Planning Commission. Let me take a breath. So. That's and that's the director back there, Executive Director Ms. Martha Schickel, who supported this since day one. Our strategy, very simple. It's an inclusive strategy. It's an inclusive approach. It's not to target anyone. It's to target an opportunity, and we're looking for long-term results. I think that's the important thing here. We're looking for solutions and partnerships with providers, such as providers that are behind me, that absolutely give us a long-term relationship in this. We want to use our existing assets instead of duplicating infrastructure. We tend to leverage our broadband technology. In other words, use the latest technologies available to provide broadband as opposed to using older technologies that are going to be temporary solutions. We want to work and prepare with communities to utilize capable telecommunications infrastructure. In other words, we don't only want you to have broadband access, we want you to know how to use it. We want you to know how to be effective, good digital citizens, to be able to educate yourselves online, to be able to perform business online, and again, like I said, as a good digital citizen. Just to really back up for a second, we start off this process. We made a lot of state and local contacts. We used the model approach that was recommended to us by the Virginia Broadband Planning Site. We partnered with Accelerate VA. That's where we got most of the data from, along with the rest of the data we already had in our GIS department. We publicized locally to the government and the schools. We made those partnerships to make our organization stronger. We began to organize our data and solicit input. That's where we got to talk with other directors in the area, other people who had been through this process, so that we know it's possible. We publicized the results and formulated next steps. That's where you saw in the newspaper and on the TV the results of our surveys. And what we were looking for is to come up with ideas to provide solutions to these lighter or underserved areas. That's where we are right now. We procured a planning grant. We're in the process of, and this is one of the public meetings that is necessary for us to take full advantage of that planning grant. Next, in meeting with the management team we're going to be taking a look at building an RFP for a consultant to come over and take a look at all the options that suit our area, dealing with our terrain and our topology, dealing with our fiber infrastructure and wireless infrastructure that's already in place, to tell us what fits best. And then we'll go forward to a formal RFP to see if we can solicit some of these great people behind us and partnering with us to see if we can get to our common goal. Again, briefly, here's a look at what we use as far as a toolkit. I actually lifted these from a couple of slides. This is the actual broadband part of the broadband toolkit. Along with this is ask the questions to kind of get your house in order, to kind of get your community ready. Some of the back end work that needed to be done as far as survey and data analysis and collection to get to this point that we're at tonight. Some more information. What's the state role? Obviously, the state plays an advocate role. They definitely, in the form of Karen Jackson and others like her, are coaches and mentors for us getting into this project. They help us document best practices, help us use their tools and develop our own tools. The community role obviously is a huge piece. We want you guys to be on the front line, to give us input at every turn, to make sure that we're focused on our goal again, which is preparing ourselves to receive the broadband access for the entire Frederick County community. And obviously being partners in this decision and an actual decision and deal makers at that point, that we have to actually go out and decide on a provider or multiple providers for a certain area. Who's here tonight? And I don't know exactly all the names who volunteered, because some people did volunteer kind of late, but we'll point them out. Chantel, would like to stand and introduce yourself, please?
My name is Brian Brooks. I'm Director of Sales for Chantel. I support the Sprint product in Frederick County, all the distribution.
I'm James Funkhauser. I'm the Business Development Manager for the fiber optic network, and I support enterprise wide area network transport and dedicated internet access.
Intelos, I believe they canceled. Okay. Visual Link.
Yeah. Hi. Move this up. Hi, my name is Mark Bayless. We're at one of the internet providers here, and I'm also I just got finished. I was on the broadband infrastructure deployment for the FCC, one of the 6 appointees on that. We just got finished the recommendations and went back to the executive branch and the chairman onto what needs to be done, communities and other types of groups in order to deploy broadband. So hopefully I'll be of some help here in this. And we provide broadband to this region, of course.
Verizon Wireless.
Good evening, Ron Lyerly. I'm the State and Local Government Sales Manager for the Washington-Baltimore market.
Hi, I'm Colleen Suarez. I'm the Government Account Executive for the county. I handle the county's wireless.
I'm Steve Kronmeyer, Government Affairs Manager for Verizon, and I'll speak to the landline part of the business.
And last but not least, Winchester Wireless.
Good evening. David Williamson. I'm the owner of Winchester Wireless. We are focusing on rural RF-based wireless broadband internet product, primarily in Frederick and Clark County.
We have another gentleman.
Yes, my name is Rudy Worrell. I am the owner of Wave2Net, high-speed wireless internet. We do provide internet services wirelessly, of course, to Frederick, Clark, Fauquier counties.
As you can see, we reached out to all the providers that are here on the list. Save Wave2Net, that was down on the bottom of the list. These are the providers that showed up. We thank them, and definitely we'll get to a point where we can ask them some questions. And again, they have graciously allowed us to have some time with them to be able to talk to them about the situation we have with broadband in our area. And hopefully we can all be respectful, and we'll actually walk away from this with some actual knowledge tonight. So thank you for coming. At this point, we're going to turn this over to the part of the meeting where we're going to allow the vendors, and we'll start down here with Verizon Wireless, to talk about some of the projects, talk about the areas they serve, talk about what we need to do as a community and a local government to allow them to grow in these areas and to help us meet our goals. Verizon Wireless, you're up first, please.
Okay, well, first I'd like to talk about a new technology that's soon to arrive in Frederick County. It's called Verizon Home Fusion Broadband. And Verizon Wireless is currently offering this to customers in 4G areas. And we'll tell you exactly when you guys should expect 4G in the county.
Yeah.
Basically, 4G will arrive in the county by the end of July. So 4G Home Fusion Broadband, simply put, what it is an antenna that's placed in your home, which accesses the nearest cell tower and uses that connection to bring up to 45 gigs or more of data in your home at about $120 per month. There are advertised prices for this. So the benefit of this is in areas where you currently don't, well, let's say you don't have fast DSL connections, you can still have those same speeds via wireless. What makes our 4G special is that there are two things that are important when it comes to this technology. One is spectrum. So 700 megahertz spectrum only means that this wavelength penetrates deeper into buildings and farther into areas that 3G can't currently enter. And the next thing is the license to operate. So we have the license to operate anywhere in the U.S. given the permission of the county. Can you talk more about where it is? Where it's going to hit
So to expand upon that, our 4G LTE technology is our version of broadband wirelessly. And to reiterate what Colleen said, we will have that in the county by the end of July, and that'll cover mainly Winchester and around the 81 area east. And then we'll expect where you currently have wireless coverage now to have 4G coverage completely by the first quarter of 2013.
Just to touch on a few points Colleen made, the Home Fusion product does operate on our 4G network, and the backbone speed of that network is the 45 gigabits that Colleen mentioned. It's designed for residential use at your home. You could expect average download speeds of 5 to 12 megabits, and it operates from an antenna that goes on your roof that's about half the size of a 5-gallon bucket. Is probably the best way to describe it. So we're excited about the technology. It's going to greatly expand the reach of our broadband offerings in the county, and we're looking forward to rolling it out this summer.
Chantel, would you like to start off and explain to us what some of the positive things you're doing in the area, what areas you serve, sure. What products may be in the pipeline? Again, as a community, as a local government, what can we do to help you enter into our least served markets?
I can share one thing that Chantel, I am an affiliate for Sprint, one of the last two in the United States. In the beginning, there were 14, and now we're down to 2, but I work for a company called Chantel, and I manage the PCS, the Sprint product in this territory. We're in the process over the next 18 months of actually ripping and replacing all of our existing cell sites and replacing them with what we call Network Vision. Network Vision will utilize all the frequencies of the multiple different carriers and frequencies that we have today, everything from 800 megahertz to the current 1900 megahertz frequency, all the way up to 2.5 frequency. The benefit that this will give the consumer, both in Frederick County and in our territory, it will give them increased penetration by lowering that 4G offering, and like Verizon and like 287 other carriers, We are also going to deploy LTE inside of this network. We're a locally based technology and locally based company, and we are going to deploy this LTE product as we deploy network vision in our market and inside of Frederick County. The current projections are to have half of the sites converted in our market. There's a total of 500 that Chantel has a responsibility for, to have those 250 cell sites converted by the end of this year, and then have the remaining 250 in 2013. But within the next 18 months, we will have every site in our network, as well as Sprint nationally will have every site in their network converted to network vision, and again, utilizing multiple frequencies, utilizing 850 megahertz, which is the old Nextel frequency, up to 2.5, and carry the LTE product on the 1900 megahertz frequency, giving you better in-building penetration and the same speeds as the other wireless providers that are launching. I did bring some maps, if kind of inappropriate to show right now, but I could show after the meeting if anybody wishes to stay around.
On the wireline side of the business, as far as residential customers, Chantel actually serves out of 4 what are known as DSLAMs, 4 DSL access points customers in Frederick County. We have 2 in ZEP, and then we have 2 in the Star Tannery area. These serve out of the Star Tannery area. We have a total of 198 drops. And out of the 2 ZEP DSLAMs, we have 35 drops. So we have a total of 234 residential customers we serve in those markets, and all have the availability for DSL. On the enterprise market, we have a fiber optic network in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. We serve enterprise customers, many of whom are in this room. We also have over the past few years, acquired cable markets. We're no longer just the Shenandoah County Telephone Company. We now have markets in Southside, Southwest Virginia, West Virginia, and in Oakland, Maryland.
Okay.
Mr. Mark Bayless from Visual Link.
All right. We offer broadband services throughout majority of Frederick County and in West Virginia and Clark County. Our advanced services, we've been continuing to move forward, and if you look on speedtest.net or some of the other sites, you'll see that we're usually 1 or 2. We're right with Comcast, one of the groups. Sometimes we're faster than Comcast on uploads. Comcast usually consistently beats us. That's mainly because we're using a wireless technology compared to fiber. One of the things we're doing, we are moving forward. We've been working on franchise agreements to come in as a secondary cable franchise, and our goal is to come into the regions where Comcast isn't serving now and work on the target areas and then build the other direction and so we're working on that right now. One of the things that I didn't hear most other people, hope some of the other guys will answer, is the second part of the question was, what could the county do or what things could be done? Yeah. Well, as we did on identifying what was needed for advanced deployment of broadband infrastructure and what needed to be removing the implements and providing logical incentives in order for broadband providers to come into regions. And that's what we focused on at the FCC with the Vice President of Verizon, myself, the CTO of Cisco, and the other groups. And one of the things we recognized, and this county is exemplary of exactly the findings that we found. As you want to go into advanced communications, and as they showed the FCC stuff for the speeds of broadband, that was 2010. We changed that because the definition of broadband is defined upon what people are using. So as it moved more toward people watching YouTube or watching Netflix, which now makes up about 80% of the traffic at night on most broadband providers' networks is Netflix, the speeds have changed. So the definition of broadband, which is living model right now, is 4 megs down and 2 megs up. Anything below those speeds is not classified as broadband. It can be sold as high speed, but it can't be advertised or marketed as broadband. So just a little clarification on that. But one of the things is you start moving forward. Right now it's 5 megs, is what 4 megs is definition. But what's happening is that the broadband is continually changing. Things are continuing to grow. So we need to aim at something that we're going to be looking at 50 to 100 megs. And one of the things that the president was pushing for is that 100 megs to the households at a given time, at a given date. One of the problems that we need to do that is we need to run fiber. And whether it's fiber with hybrid wireless networks and last mile, or whether it's fiber directly to the home, that's the model that we need to aim at. And the wireless stuff is great, and granted, wireless technology, I'm a wireless provider, that's a great thing, but as we move toward the future, we need to look at more fiber and more, because we're not going to reach that 100 megs or better to the household. Now, one of the problems that we've had, and what we did at the FCC, one of the biggest things that Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, Bright Networks, all of them came up with, was the problem of being able to deploy it fast enough. And where that came is that when we started doing attachments, as they started going to each community to get cable franchises or get attachments on the telephone poles to connect this fiber, the regulations in each community were just completely different. So the FCC set about and came up with a pole attachment fee and rate. They took a look at all the different costs of the different locations. In the north, it costs more to maintain poles than it does in the south, and they came up with fair attachment rates. Those got applied, and it greatly speed up broadband. Unfortunately, we've had a change, and one of those changes have occurred here. And what happened is that the FCC does not have the authority in order to put these fair rate attachments over cooperatives, electrical cooperatives. They were exempt because they were allowed to be into small rural areas when rural electrification came out, so they were protected. But now that they've expanded into regions like Winchester or Frederick County, they still carry those same exemptions from federal law, from the laws that were set forth. And this is something that the Congress will have to act. The FCC doesn't have the authority over states' rights on this other than what was given, set aside onto it. So give you an idea of how much this is affecting us as in deployment and advancing carriers to come in. The high in the United States where FCC has pole attachment rates is $9.80, and that's in New York City. The low in the United States is Alaska. It's $1. Anyone want to make a guess what it is here? $30 per pole, plus make-ready fees, which can be anywhere from $20,000 and up, and it could be one pole, 50 poles per mile, you don't know. And in fact, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing and planning on doing broadband deployment, those are the type of things that are hampering. Now, this is something what can be done. This is something that congressional level or the county can ask the state, because the state has the ability to go back to the Public Utilities Commissions and ask that the cooperative fall underneath the FCC fair rate attachment rules, so it's equal to the rest of the United States. That can be done, and that's something the county can be done. That's one of the key things that I see. Another one is in tower setting. All these people, Verizon and everyone, that was one of the biggest things Verizon came up with. How do we get this 95% coverage in the United States? We have to get these towers done quickly. So we have to come up with a way to do it. The county and Winchester has been very good about this, but we have to make sure, both in broadband towers or any towers that go through, that any of the towers built have the capability of supporting at least 5 carriers. We don't want towers built that will not give you the choice of multiple carriers.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. We're going to move on to Winchester Wireless. If you say a few words, and then we have another gentleman in the audience who just let himself be known to me. He wants to say a few words about satellite technology. Sir.
All right. Thank you. Our technology is a wireless-based product, just like a couple of the other carriers that are here locally sitting beside me this evening. And we're probably the new kids on the block. We've been doing this now since 2008. And in that time period, we have focused primarily on non-line of sight penetration, which has been primarily using a lower frequency on that spectrum, which is a 900 megahertz frequency. The 900 megahertz frequency allows us to be able to penetrate foliage a little bit better than some of the higher frequencies do. And for those of us that live, like in Shawneeland as an example, we've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of finances building several tower sites in Shawneeland. We have very good coverage in the Shawneeland area because we recognize that there's like 800 plus houses in that very small corridor. And so as such, we've tried to focus on some of those pockets in that time period that we've been doing this now. We've gone from 1 tower to 13 towers in the past 4 years. Some of the areas that we're just recently expanding to, down in Middletown, we're just launching a broadcast point out in the Chimney Hill subdivision area, which is going to cover down even into Front Royal from that location. We just finished putting a 100-foot tower up there. We've got a new site going out in Bluemont, which obviously this is a Frederick County thing, but we've got customers in Frederick County that are going to be affected by that Bluemont broadcast point because we'll be able to reach well beyond the Clark County border to cover customers in that area. New technologies that are really at the cusp right now that I'm sure Mark knows a lot about, having partnered with the FCC and been on some of those boards, are what's referred to commonly in our industry as TV white space. And TV white space, basically, if everybody remembers the conversion from analog to digital television service that happened just a few years ago, one of the reasons for that was to free up that 700 megahertz spectrum that Verizon Wireless was talking about down there, that went to auction, that got licensed. But there was other spectrum down in the UHF band in like the 400 to 600 megahertz range. If you remember the old channels like 14 to 51 back in the day when we had to turn the dial to get TV service, those UHF bands are being allocated in some areas for rural broadband internet services. And that was one of the reasons why, actually one of the primary reasons why FCC moved toward that digital conversion. So TV white space is actually available now. It's actually in beta testing. I was at a WISP conference, a wireless internet provider conference in Orlando back in March. They gave us a day and a half of demos, 3 different providers that have already come to market with these products. They're delivering them right now, beginning of third quarter. There are carriers in different areas in the country that are already rolling these out. Right now, they're a little bit cost prohibitive, definitely, because it is a new technology. But what some of those carriers, what some of those vendors shared with us at that conference in March was that as that product goes into general production, they're wanting to bring that cost of equipment for that customer premise equipment that would go on your rooftop down to the same cost to us as carriers as what we're paying for current technologies that all 3 of us are currently using right now, whether it be in a 900 megahertz or a 2 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz product, but to bring that down to where it's affordable for the average end user consumer to be able to pay for that to put it on their house. The good news about that product is the bandwidth that's available to deliver rural broadband services is tremendous. You can deliver about 14 megabits per second per channel. In this area alone, there's 5 UHF channels that are available, and these radios, as they come to general production, eventually through software updates are going to be able to support what's called channel bonding, which means that you could, in theory, take 2 or 3 of those channels and bond them together to be able to deliver 30, 40, 50 meg through the trees to customers. And without getting too technical, the lower that you are on the spectrum you hear everybody talk about different megahertz and gigahertz that they're broadcasting, the lower that you go on that spectrum, the longer that wavelength becomes, which means the better that it has penetration of the trees. And if you think about the old days when you had UHF television antenna, UHF stations came in from a farther distance than VHF stations did. There was a reason for that. And so that technology is a technology that we've been looking at. We've been working very closely with several vendors on, and it is a technology that we will begin implementing in areas like Shawneeland before the end of this year. It's planned right now for us for fourth quarter 2012 to begin testing on that. Obviously, we're going to be looking for beta testers, right? But the point being on that is until it comes to general production where the cost of the equipment comes down, it is going to be something that's going to be cost prohibitive. And that really is the biggest problem when it comes to really good rural broadband delivery is you got to pay to play. And the technology exists to be able to deliver some really great speeds, but it comes at a price. And that's something that until we can find ways that general production can begin to subsidize that, just like, plasma TVs, when they first came out, they were $15,000. And now how much are they? $499 over at Costco. So it's because of the volume of how many are mass produced nowadays. So that's some of the things that we have planned of what we're doing. And, hopefully as this event progresses into the future and we have additional meetings, some of us will be able to work a little bit more in concert with one another to be able to make that happen. And as Mark said before, in regards to how can the county help us? Broadcast points, broadcast points, broadcast points. And when you're done, broadcast points. Because that's it. I mean, for us as a small rural broadband company, it's cost prohibitive for us to spend $1,500 a month to get on 2 tower sites. And that's one of the reasons probably why our company hasn't grown larger quicker, because, it's a cost versus revenue, deal with us. And I'm sure it is for some of the other local small companies as well. So as we can partner with some of those tower companies that already have towers in place, we can roll out equipment a lot faster to get to these people a lot quicker.
Thank you very much. While we have a break in the action, I just want to recognize some folks that came in, and I apologize if I didn't recognize them earlier. From U.S. Senator Warner's office, we have Kelly Thomason Mercer, the project director, in the back of the room there. We have Delegate Randy Mitchell, who has graciously came out tonight to help us out. We have Ms. Cheryl Swartz, who's a legislative assistant for Delegate Sherwood's office. Thank you very much. Mr. Warwell, excuse me. What's your name?
Wave2Net welcomes the opportunity. Invited to be here to speak with you. I can see we have a few of our customers here tonight. We were founded in 2003 to do one thing, to provide affordable broadband, or high-speed internet, as you may refer to it as, to rural areas or underserved areas. And we address one small question: how do I get connected at a fairly decent speed, consistent, fast speed to the internet? Why? To go to work, to be able to stream Netflix, as a few of our other providers stated, to be able to send email, receive email, grandkids, download pictures, and so forth. Our approach is very simple. If there's a need, if there's a community, and just one person who needs connectivity, that's our focus. We're what's called a WISP, or a wireless ISP. And the idea of a WISP, or a wireless ISP, is to utilize frequencies that are unlicensed or license-free. We don't have to pay a lot of money, as Verizon mentioned earlier, to acquire spectrum. We can use the license-free spectrum, and we can deliver broadband at an affordable price. That is what Wave2Net does. Currently, we operate over 45 different towers, from Strasburg up to Williamsport, Maryland. Now, inside of those areas, definitely Frederick County does fall within those areas. One of our newest approach since about a year ago is what we refer to as our fourth generation. Our fourth generation aims to bring higher speeds to customers on a general basis. Those higher speeds, I believe Mark referred to them as 4 megs down, 2 megs up. What can you do with that? You can stream. You can use voice over IP. You can use a VPN connection while your child or someone else is streaming or listening to music, sending or receiving large files. That's our goal. Our goal is to be able to deliver 4 megabits down, 2 megabits up to pretty much any of our customers on any of those towers that we currently have. The final question that was mentioned: how can the county assist us to deliver what we intend to deliver to you? Provide us access to vertical assets at a cost-effective rate. And free is good, yes. Free, or just in a manner in which we can deliver these services out to you at a decent rate. It is quite costly sometimes to operate a WISP. So if we have the access, we have the equipment, then we can deliver the services out to you.
Thank you. I believe we have one more gentleman who came in late, Mr. Michael Kitt, who wanted to speak about satellite technology.
Hi, I'm Michael Kitt. Some of you may know me from Thai Winchester Restaurant. Tonight I'm wearing a different hat. They've talked a lot about the cellular cable and DSL options. One thing that I noticed was missing was the satellite option. Some people, just if they are in a place where there is no other way to get broadband, they can go with a satellite. I have Kittronics, which operates the Radio Shack dealership in Warrenton, Virginia. And we are doing a seed. And so for $49.99 a month, we're providing 12 megabytes down and 3 megabytes up. So you have the true broadband experience. Need better.
Power. There we go. I don't know if we need that. I thought my voice was loud enough. It's just another option for where, until somebody has another way to get it through either cable, DSL, or wireless, or in some cases they may be in a position where they'll never get it through those means, they can still have broadband if they just have a view to the southwest sky where the satellites are. I noticed that Wild Blue was one of the vendors that was invited. Wild Blue has actually been purchased by Viasat. Viasat has put up the new satellites that have the very high-speed broadband, and that is the Exceed system. So Wild Blue, for anyone that might have that, will find that that's going out, and it's being replaced now by the Exceed system. So it's really available for anybody for a very reasonable price to have the broadband where they can't get another option. Or sometimes, even if they can get another option, they may choose that.
Thank you very much. We're ahead of schedule. I do have a couple of questions for the panel before we actually go into the community questions that may help guide the conversation. Just real quick, Verizon Wireless, would you address the difference between 3G and 4G type services?
Okay, well, 3G is what we currently have in the county now. And 4G, as I mentioned earlier, runs on the 700 megahertz spectrum. It's 10 times faster, both upload and download speeds, 6 to 12 megs. It's called long-term evolution. That's what LTE stands for. And this technology will evolve and will become faster. In some areas, I've done speed tests where there are 15 megs upload and 30 download. Let's see. The biggest difference is the speed and the between 3G and 4G.
As we had mentioned, the spectrum that it's on, the efficiencies, it's going to allow us to do more with less, based on branching into this new technology as we go into the future. So we'll be able to do more, for our customers based on the technology that we've chosen.
The other thing, it's a globally adopted technology. It's adopted in China and in Vodafone Europe. There's going to be over 1 billion people using the same technology, which means there are going to be a lot more devices made for 4G. That just means more options for us here. By end of year, about 90% of our 3G network will be 4G. I'm sorry. Our 4G is 4G LTE. Yep.
Chantel, I don't know if I imagine you stated this earlier. Your coverage area as far as fiber build out into the area and broadband access into Frederick County. Can you define that area for us, for the community?
Well, actually, residentially, as I said, we're only in the far southern part of the county. We serve the greater Zepp area and the greater Star Tannery area. It's a very small number of lines. As I said, it's about 234 lines we serve in that area. As far as our fiber network, we have fiber and laterals all over Winchester and on 2 diverse routes in Frederick County. We leave Frederick County on multiple routes. We leave Frederick County and head north to Martinsburg on one route. We have another route that continues out 55 west to connect into West Virginia. We have another route that heads east, actually 2 routes that head east, one out of Martinsburg, one west of Strasburg, and then, of course, we head south to pick up the southern markets. And then we build laterals off of those. Our point of presence in Winchester is located near National Fruit, where we also have a tower. And then from that POP, we serve about 25 enterprise customers in the Winchester area and have room for lots more, by the way. We're serving anywhere in speeds from 5 megabits to 10 gigabits out of this market.
And you said you serve part of the Star Tannery area as well?
We do. As far as loops, excuse me, we have 198 drops out of the 2 Star Tannery D-slams. If anybody's familiar, the one D-slam is back near Duck Run. The other one is near Gravel Springs Church. And those are the 2 that serve that market. And then we also in Zepp actually extends from our Tom's Brook switching center, our Tom's Brook POP, And we have 2 DSLAMs that serve 35 homes in ZEP.
Mr. Bayless, I know we've met a couple times in my office. Can you describe for us what is meant by vendor-neutral bandwidth or vendor-neutral pipelines?
Yes, basically it's carrier neutral. And carrier neutral facilities are basically you have Verizon, you have AT&T, and other groups. One of the things, and I believe that Karen Jackson sitting over there had some input in, is one of the things that benefited Virginia greatly, what was called the NBC. And the NBC, using tobacco subsidy funds, built a carrier neutral network that was not owned by any of the carriers, Verizon, any other group. By doing that, it took the assets that we have in Northern Virginia, in Ashburn, where the lowest cost of basic internet transport on the planet is located. And with the ever-expanding global demand for data center operations, what they did is they extended that. It was a very smart move on their part. They extended the carrier-neutral network through a cooperative down into the regions where Virginia was losing industries such as furniture manufacturing, other types of operations, and the tobacco subsidy funds helped start that up. And now Virginia, I believe in November, the governor was able to announce one of the largest South Side infrastructure investment in the South Side of Virginia in 400 years that can be directly related to that investment, and that was the Microsoft Center for their cloud computing. And that network alone is also then extended into North Carolina, where it's brought in the Google data center, and we're seeing others to great benefit. Now, what we're looking at doing right now is carrier neutral. We're looking at doing the exact same thing, except the project that I'm working on right now is connecting Ashburn to the counties in West Virginia where the lowest cost of power is, where it simulates data centers, because the states, it's the United States, who are all working together, and we're working on global competitiveness. And so those particular assets in carrier neutral, it allows. Now typically, if you say, the reason the data centers couldn't locate in Virginia without the NBC is the typical transport cost, if you were buying bandwidth in Ashburn, Virginia, would be somewhere around $1 per meg to $5 per meg on a 1 gig circuit for transport, a 1 gig circuit. By the time you were to get that in a typical carrier from there to, say, where that data center was being built in Virginia, you'd probably be looking at somewhere between $20 to $50 per meg in transport costs. That offsets the ability for the savings of power and the location. So the facilitation of this, in order for these carrier neutral networks to come in to lower those costs, facilitated and allowed the U.S. to use the advantages that we have and extend them into these rural regions. And that's the same basic thing that we'd like to do in these regions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. Winchester Wireless, you mentioned about location, point of presence, and things like that, broadcast locations, and I'm assuming you mean towers and tower presence. Is that correct?
I think he put it a little bit better than I did, where he's talking about vertical, whatever he said.
Vertical assets?
Yeah, vertical assets, absolutely. I mean, height is definitely going to help us, but more so than just height is definitely just increasing that overall coverage, circumference with POPs that are going to be in more local areas, like some of the subdivisions that just kind of pop up, like Chimney Hills, which we just finished, and, Equestrian Estates, and some other places where we have small POPs, points of presence that are in there, in that local community where we've, partnered with the residential homeowner, gotten an easement to put equipment on their property to be able to broadcast services into a local subdivision. Is that the best way to do this? No, but you know what? I'm a realist, and WISPs across the country. We're a member of WISPA, which is a forum, association of wireless internet providers all across the country, and there's over 1,000 different WISPs just like us all across the United States, and a lot of them do exactly what we do, which is to partner with, grain silos, or, in our case, we've partnered with the Sanitation Authority here in Frederick County. We're on a couple of their water towers. We have a contract to be on their other water tower, which we just haven't done at this point because, most of the people in the Greenwood area over there in Greenwood and Cincinnati have Comcast or Verizon. But as we partner with some of those vertical assets, as we say, that definitely allows us to be able to get larger redistribution points in place to be able to then reach the smaller redistribution points that we create. Because one of the things that we want to avoid, at least I do, is we want to avoid creating this series type effect where you've got all these rebroadcast points just kind of daisy chained off of one another, because you create the proverbial string of Christmas lights at that point. And if you have something that goes out, everything behind it goes out as well. And so you want to have more of this star topology where you have a primary broadcast point that's just feeding as many customers as possible, with trying to repeat that as many tower sites as you can, as little as possible. You want to try and get those to the main sites as often as you can, just to avoid those outages and things like that sometimes are unavoidable due to electronic failure, power failure, what have you. But yes, definitely looking for any of those above. We're always interested in, and I'll put it out there to the audience that's here tonight, and we've put it out to customers that we've worked with in the past and that we will work with in the future. If you have a location that has height, we're interested in looking at it, because if you can help us to bring service into the community, it's a win for everybody. You as that individual homeowner, your entire community, and in many cases where we've partnered with people like that and they have been business owners in the local community, we are very much making our customer base aware of why we were able to deliver services in there. Like in Mountain Falls, we have somebody that we partner with that he is a local business owner up there, and so we make sure that our customers know that it's because of his generosity that we're able to deliver service into that community. So we try to give those accolades where they're due, truthfully.
And I appreciate your answer. Getting to the partnerships, and Mr. Bayless talked about carrier neutral pipelines throughout the county. If there are other kind of networks, would that draw interest from each of the providers up here, whether you're talking about the white space, as you mentioned earlier, with Super Wi-Fi and 802.22 technology, which is basically, for all those in the audience, those are those analog channels that when we went to digital are kind of still just hanging out there. If those networks were in place, would there be any interest from the panel up here for partnering with vendor neutral or carrier neutral kind of pipelines, as Mr. Bayless was referring to?
I firmly believe that there would be, and the way that product has been developed, there is a central database for the administration of that product, because one of the challenges that the unlicensed spectrum has had, and will continue to have, is channel planning. Quite honestly, especially in the lower spectrum, in the 900 megahertz spectrum, you have 3 non-overlapping channels, and it becomes a challenge to not step on each other's footprint, and sometimes even not to step on your own footprint when you're trying to increase coverage in an area. The nice part about TV white space is that because of that central database and the way that those radios are managed, they're GPS synchronized, and they report back to a central clearinghouse database that's managed by 10 independent companies that were contracted by the FCC once every 24 hours. And so it reports back what frequency that's broadcasting on, and the database clears them to be able to continue to operate on that frequency, us as a carrier. And if for some reason that frequency is no longer available because another television broadcast company might be occupying that frequency now, then it will tell that radio that it needs a shift, and it shifts dynamically, and then it pulls out to all of the subscribers that are connected to that access panel, and then those subscribers will shift dynamically as well. It is an incredible technology from what I've seen, and it is one that I believe is not the solution, but is definitely going to add to the solution for not only Frederick County, but really rural USA in general.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move into the community portion for questions. Again, these providers have graciously allowed us their time this evening. Please, if you have any question, please step up to the mic, state your name, your address, and state your question. So everybody has great internet service? There you go.
Hi, my name is Ed Nail. I live at 130 George Drive, Winchester. It's Route 50 East, about 4.5 miles. Most of you guys I have called asking for help, or even I have other property that may help you out, but getting responses back is almost impossible. Big network, Verizon. I've called you and still never got a response back, even though a drop is less than a quarter of a mile from our development. They upgraded our switch box about 5-6 years ago. from a Verizon employee, all you need to do is put a card in there, and we could have got DSL. But I can never get responses back from Verizon to do that. But now on 50 East, 4.5 miles, does anybody have any plans for upgrading that area right on the Clark County line before Waterloo?
Wave2Net does provide service in that area. Now, as it is with most wireless signals, it depends on where you're located and whether or not we can get a line of sight.
Right, yeah, I realize we do have trees in our development, which is stopping a lot of you, but with the lower bandwidth, it could come available. And like I said, I know you have a tower over on 7. I don't think you have one on 50 on Blue.
We've got some coverage on
but
customers right in that particular region, but there's a lot of little drops down there by the stream.
Back to me to find out if I have coverage. It's been impossible.
Okay.
And is there a list of towers, cell towers, that we can look at and say, hey, this is close to us, this is not close to us?
Well, I don't think the county, but one thing I can offer to you, Ed, is the opportunity to look through some of the maps that I brought with us. Okay. The one thing that Shentel can offer that maybe other national carriers can't is a very local view of the county.
Sure.
We're from the area. Actually, one of the questions I didn't answer was how do we find sites? And we actually ask our retailers, we ask our stores, and we get a consensus, and then we go out and we look for what we call search rings to find the sites. The challenge around all that, the raw ground, is it takes 2 years to build. Sure. So one thing I would be happy to look at with you after this meeting is to
also
look at
what
these
happened
sites.
to the internet over the power lines. I know it was real noisy. It was a test bed down Manassas a few years ago. Did that fall through?
It didn't. The power over the internet part and the aspect, the tests that were done in Manassas and the other groups, it did work, but the capacities just weren't really there. There was also some challenges from the American Amateur Radio League because of leakage over top of the wires that interfered with licensed communications that had effects. And really the power, the broadband over the power line really turned out, for masses, it wasn't that good. It's great for meter reading and small little telemetry, but that's basically what it turned out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll be glad afterwards.
If I can have an opportunity to just comment on your question. We're always happy to look at residential subdivisions to see if there is a way to be able to bring service in, especially if there's multiple residences in the community. So I'm happy to meet with you tonight afterwards, or you can call the office and set an appointment with me. I'd be happy to come out and take a look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
We appreciate it, and I think that was a great question of how do you pick your location, your sites or markets that you move into. Is there a best approach that the county can take? Do we need to survey better in those communities? Do we need to show population build up in trends? Do we need to show business build up in trends to help inspire internet providers into that market? Because obviously, if we can share some of our planning that's going on, or some of the businesses that may be going into that community, that may kind of pull your coattails and say, hey, this may be a market I want to get into because this is an economically developing area, and I want to be involved in the process. How do we go about making that kind of connection with the providers? Anyone?
Okay. I'll make a comment on the last question. Ed, if I can catch you for a minute after the meeting and get your name, address, and phone number, I'll be happy to look into your DSL situation.
Now, Walter, one of the things that would help all of the internet providers here is we look at the map. We have GIS maps that show where the population is, where the households are in the region, and you're looking at these maps showing where the concentrations are. But what we need more than anything is we need to know where people want to be customers. As a lot of times we'll do marketing in a given region and we just won't get any response, but that in some region. So all of us have seen the same thing. That's why we don't do these giant marketing campaigns, because it usually doesn't pay off. But if there are regions to where you guys have, if the county people wanted to say, hey, I'm interested in broadband, I would subscribe if it was here, that's the kind of stuff is shared between all of us would be great. And then you'd have us all fighting over you. So you have more providers and more people coming. So I think that would be the best way to do it. If we had a centralized clearinghouse Instead of calling up any one of us individually, I know I'm probably shooting myself in the foot in saying that, but you would get more bang of the buck because you'd have more of us fighting over you. So I think that would be something that the county could do.
I think I definitely agree, and I think that definitely we can work on some of that, and maybe in the form of a database or survey more actively. I guess the other point of that is a lot of the providers provide maps on their internet sites, which let's be honest aren't always accurate. And I appreciate the gentleman from Verizon saying that, hey, tell me what your name is, your address, and we'll address that. And I know Mark, I know some other individuals on the panel have done the same. I think that's important too, and from the community, we need to see realistic data on the maps. And like I said, without calling anyone out, if we go to some of the websites, in fact, we showed one site where we showed the wireless coverage, where it showed almost the entire county, when we all know that kind of isn't the real story. So I love partnering with you as far as a county provider type of a database where you could find out where there's potential subscribers in a certain area, and maybe that helps you build up your network or gives you a more informed approach on how you want to build your networks out. But that's something we also need to address as well. There was a gentleman also in the back that had a question.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Sutton. I live at 202 Connor Lane. I'm a customer of Wave2Net currently, but I've been a customer of Wild Blue that was mentioned, a couple of different satellite providers. I work from home. I actually work for Cisco Systems. I'm a developer. I've been developing for a long time. I've worked for Cisco for 2 years, so I'm fairly technically able. The challenge, the technology, the competing technologies that we have coming into the area sounds wonderful, but one of the challenges that my wife and I at least have experienced, and others in our neighborhood who are here tonight have experienced, is promises of speeds, hardware capabilities, etc. For a subscription. We have to pay for the hardware up front, where we're paying $400, $500, $600 to get the hardware just installed on our roof. That's also in addition to a 2-year contract typically that has to go along with it. Once we have that subscription hit, I can guarantee you that our credit card is hit very reliably, very accurately, 100% every single month. The challenge is that our speeds don't compensate there. We recently went through an 11-day period of time where we had, on average, we were receiving 10 bits per second download speeds, not 10 megabit, 10 bit. This was for 11 days. We got very good smile and nod customer service telling us, oh, we're working on it. But at the end of that 11-day streak, when we called up to talk to the business office saying, we'd like a refund for that because that can't be considered service, we were told, no, according to our service plan, according to the terms of service that you agreed to, we are within our rights to continue to charge you, and you should be happy and go away. So one of the questions I guess I have is with cell phones, you can walk into a place, and because of subsidies, you can walk in and you can get a cell phone and walk out of there for relatively cheap for that 2-year contract. But for wireless, we're not able to do that. So when it comes to the point that a service provider guarantees a certain rate, okay, you pay me X number of dollars, I will provide you X bandwidth to your house, even understanding that there are bad days, there's interference, there's sunspots, whatever account that you want to give, is there a point at which a customer can say, look, I don't care that my tower or my dish talk to your tower, I'm not being able to pull down the guarantee, basically the services that I was given or sold. Is there any type of discussion around that softer side of it to understand, here's what a service agreement is. Here's what as an end customer you can expect. Is there anything along that line?
And the answer is two things I want to talk to you on that. First of all, yes. The FCC, they're looking at broadband speeds, and we're looking at advertised broadband speeds to what the actual throughputs that are delivered across. So if someone advertises a given speed, it has to be able to deliver to a given amount of customers at a time for the capacity, so that we don't have people advertising, say, 10 meg speed, and they only have the capability of delivering 10 meg capacity to, say, 3 out of 1,000 people. Those are things that are being looked at in rulemaking, and it's going to be done more under the fair advertising and what the definition of broadband is for delivery. That's being done on the FCC part on the federal level. But one of the things that needs to be, and it goes a little bit back to the tower question, since you're talking on wireless part, is that the FCC to make sure that people had competition. So AT&T, Sprint, the other Verizon would have competition, and the prices would be there, and it would drive competition. They required that any towers be built, had to be built to where multiple carriers could be on them, and there had to be a fair pricing for other carriers to come on to an existing tower. So if Verizon owns a tower or Shentel owns another tower, another carrier that competes against them can come onto it without an anti-competitive environment. So that way it gives you choices, and you don't get locked into multiple-year contracts because you have plenty of choices. People can't do that. And so those are the type of things. Now, currently right now on wireless towers, people putting up towers right now, there's no requirement saying that you have to allow other ISPs to be on the tower infrastructure that goes through. Now, if Verizon built a tower, unless the county requests it be built as some camouflage operation that can't support multiple carriers, then it has to support multiple carriers. It has to be a fair rate. I think that would be something that the county could do that I would see would put it into a very leading position as into like the FCC is looking for its Race to the Top program for recognition for communities, would be to, one, make it easier for us to build towers and get implementation to build commercial towers, but also to require that there be the aspect that it follows the same FCC rules as to multiple carriers and fair carriage of equipment and things back on. So you wouldn't get into this particular region. Because realistically, we don't just want broadband throughout the county. We want you to have a choice of as many providers as possible. Because otherwise, you're just building monopolies. You want choices. And you don't want people to lock you into multiple-year contracts so that the only people there are the choice. So, that's something I hope that answers your question.
To follow up with your question, because you are a customer of Wave2Net, the answer to even avoiding any issues such as the one you're having right now is improved technologies. We heard a little bit about TV white spaces, GPS coordination, channel planning, and so forth. That is the biggest challenge wireless ISPs face, because a lot of the frequencies we use are unlicensed. And what that means is that anyone can turn on anything and cause an issue. Now, things might be great for, a year or two or so forth, but then all of a sudden things can stop. And that is a really big thorn in our sides, and we work diligently to correct them. So one of the things that we're looking at is using some of those licensed frequencies or universal type frequencies where there's a license and it does require some coordination. In your case, you're experiencing things such as that. But the bigger issue is if we did not deploy an unlicensed band, then we would have more control over the quality of service, which I think that's where you're going, the quality of service that we can deliver.
Well, it's 2 points. That's actually one, the quality of service is very important. I work from home. It's very, important to me that I be able to get online and do my job. The other half of that, though, is that when those interference type points come, when it's unable for whatever technological reason to not be able to provide service, and that doesn't mean that I can see your tower and that I can acknowledge your tower and that I can ping it, but that comes from the fact of, if 100% of the promised bandwidth, if we consider any time below 50%, that's considered, not reasonable type service. Anything along that line, that's where I'm more concerned right now about the service agreements, because with the satellite providers, with different providers a long time, there's been a promise of X speed. And yet when that speed isn't delivered, we're locked into a contract, we're locked into hardware, we have spent hundreds of dollars in order to get that service to our house. But there's no, and actually I think the competition's the best answer going on. Maybe not necessarily technology, but the more competition there is in the area, the more, impetus there is to make a difference and make a change. But I'm more concerned right now with the softer side of it, the human side of it, of saying it didn't happen. I can pull out, I've got graphs and cron jobs that run and tell me what my services are throughout the night, and I can show where that's not happening. And I'm more concerned with the fact that I can't get a refund. I can't get, any kind of resolution to that, even though, the technical challenge seems to have gone away at this point. That's more my concern. That's more where my question is based this evening.
Yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, I can't speak for anyone else, but I don't think that's typical of most of the providers.
Yeah, I will say thank you for that question, first of all, because I know with our company, we do value IT customers and the input that they can provide to us, because we understand that there are some people in the IT field that get services from us that actually know more than we do about certain aspects of what we do. And so we welcome that feedback from time to time, and we've definitely had customers that have helped us to resolve issues over the past 4 years, and we've been grateful for that. They've helped fix their problem as well as problems for the customer base as a whole. So definitely, I mean, that feedback is always good regardless, and I'm sure Wave2Net appreciates that feedback as well. One of the answers, I think, and one of the things that we have focused on has been no contract, not to have a contract, because we feel that the customer definitely should be in control of that situation, especially when they've spent as much money as they have in order to get service to begin with those product offerings. We've taken the position since day one that this is a partnership between our company and our customer. And if we don't deliver, the customer should not be obligated to pay. And, I don't know, as Mark said, how everybody operates, but I do know that in our respect, we have been focused on making sure that we put our best foot forward, and when we can't, we want to part ways with our customers' friends. If for some reason, as Rudy was saying, if RF changes and all of a sudden you can't get service anymore, it's not your fault. And in many cases, it's not even the ISP's fault. And then it becomes find a solution at that point as to how you guys can dissolve that relationship and still be amicable. And, we've definitely had, a handful of customers over the past 4 years that we've had similar situations with, and we try as often as possible to part on, good relations, because we want those customers to still be able to refer people to us down the road. So.
And Lauren, you have referred people to us, and we appreciate it. Please see me after this, if that's okay.
Excellent. Well, I have the panel up here. Just a question. As far as the towers are concerned, just one correction here. In Frederick County, we do have a co-location policy, if I'm correct, Mr. Lawrence. We do have a co-location policy, so if anyone does put up a vertical asset, they are required to make it sustainable for multiple satellite or dish connections or devices on there. As far as the panel up here, in talking about the process of getting a vertical asset or access to a vertical asset, has any one of the panel members had an issue with Frederick County in getting a vertical asset or a request to build a tower?
Not necessarily a problem in doing so, but the cost to do so, even just to submit the fee for a conditional use permit hearing, is quite substantial for an operation such as mine or the other wireless ISP. And so what I meant by facilitating access to that is, if we're working towards a common goal, we can't be looked at like a national carrier. We're a completely different animal, where our target base is maybe 10 customers, and we want to get that service to them. So facilitating that access would be good. And it's not a problem in getting it done, but the barriers of entry are pretty high.
Does anybody else want to elaborate on that? Because I've heard that a couple times tonight about the policy, about what should be on the pole, about what type of vertical asset it should be. Is there anything that we need to, as a government, to look at within our permitting process? We heard one reaction in the process. Something we need to look at, Mr. Bayless? Oh.
Yep, subsidizing some of the costs of fixing equipment to some of those vertical assets. Quite honestly, because, not to single out Shentel, but we've talked with them in the past, in regards to some of the towers that they have, because being that they're a Sprint affiliate, they've got quite a good tower presence here in the area. But to be above 100 feet on one of their towers is $1,500 a month, and there's some fees that are associated with even engineering studies to be able to permit out that to begin with. And, when we're focused on trying to deliver rural high speed, not broadband, at $39 a month price bracket, which is very affordable for our customers. One of the challenges is keeping those margins and paying $1,500 a month for a particular tower site. And, if that tower was half that cost, we would probably be more apt to look at putting equipment on it. And even if it is delaying out those costs to where for maybe the first 12 months, you have a 50% reduction in the cost of those co-location fees as you're acquiring a customer base on that tower. So we are not a national carrier. We don't have deep pockets like a lot of the national carriers do. But if we can have some sort of subsidization to where we can get to those towers to begin with, to build the customer bases on those towers to begin to pay for those co-location fees without then having to pass those along to our other customers in the form of price increases, I think that everybody wins in a scenario like that.
You keep talking about satellite towers. What's wrong with underground? I live in Shawneeland. I have Verizon, and I'm not ragging on you guys. Had you for years. My cell phone service stinks. And when I'm on my home phone, all I hear is, ooh, because it's a copper line.
Hey, can you step up to the mic so people...
Underground. Wires, fiber optics, Fios, or whatever that they're always advertising.
Yeah. Well,
Comcast has it.
yes, there's I can't speak for Comcast, but Comcast that we're actually in some discussions right now with the county actually for permits on that.
I would rather have that. I want the trees around my home.
Yeah.
I travel 2 hours to work because I want to be in the country.
Right.
But I shouldn't be treated like Wilma Flintstone because I live in the country.
I agree, and there are, and you know, it's always nice to have the city benefits and also be in the county, the best. But as far as underground, there's some new technology called microtrenching that we'd like to adopt, but it doesn't fit in Shawneeland, and because of the road conditions. Typically, a conditioned road has asphalt and gravel underneath, and then your regular utilities are a given distance under the freeze line.
Verizon again.
Right. Well, no, not necessarily. We've been the FCC. One of the things they identified, and all the carriers have been asking for, is for counties and communities to allow us to do microtrenching, to where we put a small slit about the width of a Bic ink pen, and we go down just below the conditioned road surface into the gravel, and we don't have to worry about any other pipes or anything else. We can run it very quickly, and then we seal the stuff back over top in just a small little strip. It has to make some changes because most building codes require they're left over from an electrical or water conduit, and they require it to be a different distance. South America and other countries have put hundreds of thousands of miles of fiber using this particular technique. Unfortunately, in Shawneeland, there aren't conditioned road surfaces. It's asphalt just put on top of whatever's there, so there's no conditioned base underneath. In Shawneeland, our biggest problem that we've been looking and doing our cost justification for there is the pole attachments, because you start talking about 28 poles per mile, and you start talking about the attachment fees and then the make-ready fees, and it makes it hard to go through. So we're working on some other solutions that we're, I can't at liberty to talk about to try and do that in those particular regions.
And how long?
Yeah, I know.
I can't even get my paycheck stubs from my job because.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, Shawneeland and Mountain Falls are very attractive areas, and they'd be very attractive for Comcast as well. It's just the way that they build up their network, the amount of telephone pole miles they have to go to, where there are very few customers to get to where these density of population is, and it just doesn't meet their model. We're planning a different model where we want to target those particular assets and not the empty voids in between, because they build theirs in a method to where they just continue to string and go through. We're going to be building in pockets and then expanding outward. So
Comcast, they said they knew nothing about this meeting. Absolutely nothing. I had no clue it was even happening.
I'll just smile.
That's a 1-800. That's a 1-800 national number.
My mama said, when you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything.
Can I address her question?
Yes.
Okay. There are two carriers sitting right here.
I know, but I've talked to your customers,
Mm-hmm.
and none of them are happy. Out of 10 people, I have not got one good comment for either one of your companies. Therefore, I will not pay $580 for your equipment and $70 a month to have dial-up service. That's what you provide, dial-up. If I'm going to have dial-up, then I'll use local net dial-up.
Okay.
Can
I address that question? I'd like to address that question on
Yes.
behalf of both of our companies, actually.
Sure. Three, actually.
Yeah, all three, really. Just because you have a bad restaurant experience doesn't mean you don't ever go back to Outback and have a steak again. Okay. May I talk for just a minute? And then you can rebut if you'd like. The challenge is that as an industry in general, the ISP industry is a very thankless industry. We have a lot of customers on service collectively, all of us up here. We have a lot of satisfied customers on service. But unfortunately, it's those unsatisfied customers that are going to be the ones that are going to be the most vocal about any product or service that people use. So what my encouragement to you would be, whether it's my company, whether it's Wave2Net, whether it's VisualLink, one of these three sitting up here is try the service.
School bus driver, $600 is almost my mortgage.
My question, and I think the young lady makes a great point. If if she is apprehensive about your services, what programs do you three, and because you directed to the three of you, what programs do you have in place for her to try the service without spending $600 for the equipment?
They don't. I've called, I've emailed.
Look, I'd like to address that. Okay. First of all, typically we don't have anything that we offer that basically says try it before you pay for it. But we do have a 30-day money-back guarantee that says that as long as the customer communicates with us during the course of that time period, and if they have any problems, that they give us opportunity to be able to resolve that issue. And if we're able to unsatisfactorily resolve that issue within that time period, that we will give them 100% of what they pay us on day one back. And that is in writing on our website.
30 days of good service, and I'm happy. And the next 8 years, I get crap.
Well,
you're still going to charge me for it.
We have no contract on our service, so it is a month-to-month pay-as-you-go program.
I get my money back, but you'll come take your $600.
I will tell you that there have been more than one occasion where I have purchased equipment back from customers up to 6 months after they have been on service with us when they had a situation like whatever that gentleman was. It was the Wave Connect customer.
Let's do this to move forward.
We have had situations like that.
Let's do this to move forward. If I could get your name and address, and maybe we can communicate offline. And maybe we can hook you up with one for Brad.
Because I'm not paying for their service.
Okay. We can communicate offline, see if we can work something out. I guess the gentleman's offering an extended kind of trial period, and maybe we can talk and facilitate that. But I want to keep this going in a positive direction. And again, I appreciate everybody for coming out. Does anybody else
got the money to do underground?
Yes, sir. Would you please step up to the podium, sir? I appreciate it. Hey, how about a better hand?
My name is Bernie Schwartzman, and I live on Redbud Road, and I'd like to answer a question that Chantel neglected or overlooked, and that is that they did have a tower voted down by the county commissioners a number of years ago. And the reason they did that, supposedly, is because it blocked the view from the Third Battle of Winchester. However, if you taken a mirror and held it up to your eyes, looking at where that tower was supposed to be, and turned around and looked, there was a nice big tower on Bowden Drive. That's 1.3 miles from my house. Because I've been working with them on download speeds of 2.5 kbs at times. So slow we could not even get a speed test at Sprint. That's how slow it was. And those download speeds are there most of the time. Occasionally I'll get a spurt over a megabyte. But it's poor service. It's the same problem the other gentleman had. It's wireless. It's through
It's on Sprint.
Mobile broadband hotspot.
Yep.
And my cell phone works great in the same location, but for my internet connections on my computer, it's horrible most of the time. And they could have put a tower up 2 lots over at the Gregg residence, and we would have had wonderful download speeds, not only in the Redbud area, but probably at Snowden Bridge also. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may comment real quickly,
yes.
It seems like the answer, and we've heard it from Verizon this way: wireless, and there are advantages to that because we can deploy very quickly, and obviously in areas where we can't build because of physical constraints, such as Shawnee Land and what Mark was speaking about regarding getting cables on the ground. The answer in the near term is wireless. Also, the problem seems to be some wireless situations. And it goes back to the question, what can the county do? For us, Wave2Net and other wireless ISPs, if we, again, have access to those vertical real estates, whether you own them or not, we'll be able to deliver better services. Typical rule in wireless: stronger the signal, better the chance of having a good quality. So the answer is wireless. The problem sometimes can be wireless, and a lot of times, as that gentleman just pointed out, perhaps if there was a different location, maybe he would get a stronger signal, therefore better service.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. just step right up to the podium and state your name and address?
Just work. I'm Robert Lohman. I'm 2601 Green Spring Road in the northern tip of Frederick County. I mean, in the northern tip, right up at the very tip of Virginia. And we have a very, very limited cell phone service and internet service. Now, I have Verizon Air Card, and I recently purchased a 4G. Doesn't do me any good because I only have 3G. You tell me we're going to get 4G shortly, and that sounds wonderful. But what I'd like to have is an answer on when we're going to get a tower. I mean, internet service by way of tower is great, but you got to have a tower first. In the northern tip of Virginia, there are no towers. It's an underserved area. When is that going to happen? I don't care how many people get on the tower. That gives us a choice. That's great. But we've got to get the tower first. And when is that going to happen? Can you tell me?
No.
Well, our towers aren't publicly advertised. There could be a tower there already if you're getting service, 3G. I wrote down your address. I can find out what's available.
I have 3G, but I don't have a Verizon tower. I have extended network. I think it's Cellular One or something. I'm not sure. And it's only just one notch better than dial-up. Not very good. When I travel, I get 3G or 4G. It's great. But when I'm home, where I live, 10 months out of the year, we've got virtually nothing. All we've got is extended network through cellular tower. There's no. When I bought the Air Card, they said they were going to put Verizon towers out there, but they haven't yet. So it's 2601 Green Spring Road in Winchester, in Frederick County. We're in the northern tip of the county. I'm sure there are other people here that might be in the same area. I'm not sure.
To follow up with your question, we did add a tower north of you as far as our services are concerned, which is wireless, which may be able to do something for you.
What company?
We're with Wave 2Net.
Yeah, we've got one too right at the corner of Morgan County and Hampshire County and Frederick County, right at the top of 522 in the top part. It's right. In fact, it is the farthest point in Frederick County. It's right at the point where it meets the two other.
Okay, we're down a little bit, about 10 miles down. I'm not sure we can reach that far.
Yeah, if you see that big tower with a strobe flashing off in the distance, that's the one we're on.
Yeah, I don't think we access that with cell or with
Okay, yeah.
At this point, does anyone else have any other questions? Yes, sir.
Real quick, Casey Klein. It's basically addressed for you.
Yes, sir.
What is the point about, as a resident, trying to find carriers, we be a more centralized person to deal with all the carriers that are out there? A centralized shopping database, the same thing you were saying earlier. That's what the question of the county. This is the first step in your process, but what's next as far as that goes, as far as doing speed checks, everything we want as a resident?
Sure. From my position as Director of Technology, trying to facilitate bringing a resolution here, I propose that we do indeed build a database where we collect your names, collect your addresses, encourage you to provide information about your current provider, satisfaction notes, things like that. So as we find providers that come into the area or that may be in your area that you may not be aware of, we can make you aware of it. And again, just like the gentleman down at the end of the counter was saying, people may not be aware that there's already providers in that area. They may want to shop around a little bit, and we can definitely facilitate that and make that happen.
So could it just be a web-based kind of thing where we can go to and say where we are and what we're looking for, and then show providers?
I'd love for us all to get a shared email database. We'd be running through a database.
Correct. We do have a survey. We have some information on that. We're open to do it a lot of different ways. And we certainly, I'd love to have your, please give your name.
Your mic's not working.
My admin assistant. Thank you very much. Give your name to my admin assistant in the back, and we'll work together. I'd love your input on partnering to build something that works right for the community. I have Ms. Jackson over here that has a question. 1 second.
Actually, I'm hoping to save you a little bit of work. The state actually has a broadband map. It's at wired.virginia.gov. We'll make sure you have the address. you can enter your personal address into that database and see which providers report having service at your location. With wireless, note that I said report having service. We don't know where every tree is, so it's not a guarantee of service, but for every provider that's participating in the National Broadband Mapping Initiative, which actually is information that's collected by the state, if you enter your address, you will bring up an entire list of everybody that says they have service at your location.
Well, everyone I've talked to so far says I'm in a dead area.
And there is a way for you to report that on the map, but you also need to report it. I would encourage you to report it at the local level. I'd also encourage anybody that's here tonight that doesn't have service and wants it, let's put a sheet of paper up here, get your names, get your phone numbers, and these guys will gladly contact you before there's a ready group right here that's probably looking for service, and I'm sorry I threw you guys under the bus, but you're there. So another issue as well, and maybe this will be a tool that you can use, with the help of Virginia Tech, we're actually standing up a database of vertical assets. We haven't launched that yet. We're in the process of beta testing it right now. They're part of the test. It's actually loaded currently with the FCC database information. We've loaded those towers. We've also loaded some state towers that should be available with some, hopefully some space on them. But if you own a silo, a tank, a tower that you think one of these guys can use, get us the GPS coordinates, let's get it into the map, and then they can start to plan their services around the vertical assets, as somebody mentioned earlier, that are inherent in the county. The biggest problem is not knowing where they are and not knowing who owns them. And we're trying to crack that code, because the more we can find out about where they are, who owns them, and how people can get on them, cost is always going to be an issue. But if we can crack those three pieces, then there's a lot better chance of you getting service sooner, because duplicative infrastructure won't need to be built, which is a cost savings. And if it's already there and they can pop the service up on it pretty quickly with a minimal amount of capital expenditure, then I would encourage you, to get with whoever is the right person and make them aware that you've got a structure that you're willing for somebody to do.
Does anyone else have any questions? At this time, as Ms. Jackson said, we're going to go ahead and create a list. If you want to stop back here to my admin assistant, Nina, she will take your name, your address, let her know what your internet service is, and someone will be in contact with you to help you out, to partner you with a vendor, or to get you some to get you some answers to some of the questions you may have. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and allow the meeting to close. If anyone has any questions for the panel up front, they need to talk to them offline. I know the gentleman from Centel wanted to share some maps. At this time, you may do some. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming out, our political supporters, our county staff, the public citizen members. Thank you very much.
I'm Mark.